So I, as Luke was saying, am with Booster. I've been with Booster for about 3 years now, and prior to that I've spent close to 25 years in the startup ecosystem with a focus on how do you take science and turn those into companies and actually build successful companies. So I've been working with science institutes, helping transfer those out in seed VC funds, so venture capital firms, helping to kind of place money to build those. And then I've also got some scars from being in young companies and building those, and had some near wins, but it just didn't fly. So there's some, I have a lot of passion and respect for the companies that we support, because it's not easy. And to see, to be able to actually bring a groundswell of investors into these kind of companies is what I'm passionate about.
There we go. Part-time IT. Yeah. Okay, I'll get us one through myself.
Oh, I can turn it. I was thinking on full screen.
Oh, yeah. Technologies. Tyson's business.
So because this fund is listed on the NZX, this is a standard disclaimers to say this is an incomplete presentation. So there is a document that provides a lot more detail, but I recommend talking to Robert in terms of getting that support as to whether this is the right one for you. So just to give you a bit of background on who Booster is, you probably all know we've been around 25 years now as a financial institute, and are looking and supporting over 190,000 clients now. And so part of our mission and responsibilities, we've been quite considerate to see how do we help get some of that capital that people's retirement money and savings, to help build a better New Zealand. And so we've taken some steps to really look at how we can set up funds that invest directly in New Zealand companies. So yet we have a lot of the traditional instruments around how to build your wealth in bonds and listed equities and other assets. This is the higher risk end of your portfolio of investment, where typically you would be putting about less than 1% of your total investment portfolio into something like this. But this is where it's exciting, the innovation fund. So the other thing just to kind of pull out is that over the last 6 years, our commitment to investing in New Zealand enterprise now is up at around 300 million. And so that's quite a bit of a pioneer in terms of that whole KiwiSaver category, and how do you find ways to responsibly bring your clients into that investor kind of space. So the Innovation Fund is where it gets exciting, and so why do we focus on innovation? There's some really inherent things in the New Zealand economy now that have been building up over the several decades. We have a culture of innovation, and so I don't know if you've seen more recently in the media, Rocket Lab. I don't know how many of you have heard of Rocket Lab. It's a New Zealand company sending rockets into space. And so Peter Beck set this company up about probably over 20 years ago now. And so he's built this company. A small portion of New Zealand was able to invest in him in the early days because they were deemed wholesale investors. But unless you were familiar with how to invest in these kind of companies, a lot of us are precluded from really supporting and backing these kind of ambitious companies. And so now every Kiwi can back them because they're listed on the NASDAQ. That's 20 years later, when a lot of that value build, so as companies build, it's high risk, but the value build goes like this, and then when they list, it starts to flatten out, so a bit more different risk profile. So culture of innovation, like we can get some great starts from New Zealand. The tech sector now is also the second largest exporting sector in New Zealand. They've been growing 77% faster than the general economy over the last 7 years. So that again is an indicator that we've got this groundswell of great innovators that we should all be able to back. The other thing that's kind of really growing up in the New Zealand economy is that there's specialist investors, there's venture capital funds now, a lot of specialist funds that are getting depth of expertise and experience to kind of back the next rocket bags that are kind of coming through. And so where it's now ready for us to then look at how do we leverage alongside these specialist investors to build the capacity capital into these companies so that they actually create value in New Zealand. They are employing people, paying high value jobs, and so we're actually bringing a lot of that value, retaining it in New Zealand for longer as they build into big companies. And it means that we can then have the opportunity to create higher returns in an investor's portfolio. So high risk, smaller amounts, but in some really meaningful, exciting companies. So we think things are all lined up for us to confidently stand up a fund which gives all Kiwis a chance to kind of come back into these companies. And the way we do that is by building diversity, so I'll come back to that in a bit. So we haven't just launched into this without a lot of consideration. It's been over 6 years in the making. So we started our journey into supporting our companies with a partnership with Victoria University here in Wellington. So a lot of the origins of what we're doing started here in New Zealand. And then we, Otago University also partnered into this partnership fund. So we invested alongside those universities to help get some of these ideas out faster, alongside other investors that were kind of coming in alongside these kind of science and engineering type companies. Then in 2022, we listed the fund on the exchange. That's no easy feat in terms of standing that up. It was a small fund and we had 18 companies. 2 years on, we've invested in over 40 companies, and that fund, the value of our little slice in all those companies is now at 20 million. So we're kind of seeing that momentum build and a signal of these high quality companies that are coming out of our universities and also the private sector, and that we can support. So that's just a snapshot of the performance to date. It's been a promising start in terms of 20% return per annum since inception. Promising because I want to caution you that this isn't volatile in terms of companies, big ambitions, big swings. Not all of them are going to survive. So how we kind of spread that dollar across several investments is one way just to kind of buffer some of the challenges that are inherently ahead of some of these companies. So it's a bit more effective to kind of back 20 plus companies instead of trying to pick one or two and hope that they might kind of pull through. We rank it, you can see there that it's the highest on our risk scale, number 7. So huge potential, really exciting, but it's risky. So our strategy in terms of what underpins the way we kind of build this portfolio. So we invest early, so a lot of promise, a lot of ambition, some evidence that the technology or their product concept is working, some assumptions that this group in the market wants what they've got, and they have a plan and a team to execute. So really, so a lot of things that need to play out. To manage, and I keep kind of repeating this, but our mission is to have a diverse portfolio, which we think is optimal at 40. And there's some thinking around that in terms of as you sort of, you need to kind of be building that up so if one falls over, it doesn't erode all the value that's building in those high performers. Because we go in early with small checks, so typically we would put between 200 to 400 in those first younger companies. And then we've got the opportunity to see how they build. Have they delivered to plan? Is the market kind of engaging with what they're building? And then we can get confidence and then we can put in another dollar. And then you start to kind of see and follow them as they kind of build in value. Every time we put in a dollar though, we syndicate with other investors. So we don't profess to be experts in biotech, clean tech. There's so many different kind of opportunities in New Zealand. So we partner with other investors in New Zealand who are investing in New Zealand who have deeper pockets in terms of if you think how much it costs to take a drug discovery and get that through to a patient, that's many millions. So we do not want to be the only person financing that company. So we partner with, in that particular case, one of the largest Australasian life science investors, and so that we are alongside skilled people with the networks that can help build those companies. So those are the 4 parts to what drives us every day. I love this slide. This is all the companies that we've backed since we started into this space. So there's 35 active companies, but we've invested in close to 40. Some of those you can see just haven't quite made it, and man, that hurts in terms of the dedication of those teams. But for several reasons, it doesn't work. But nonetheless, I think we would have. We've learned some good things as to why you might not do that again, but more often than not, it's that market alignment, or the technology hasn't quite got to where it wanted, or things outside their control, where in one case, one company, Avalia, this drug development company developing a vaccine, they were days away from signing a strategic partnership with a pharmaceutical company to take their drug into patients. Change of leadership at the top, went through all the projects, anything below the line, stop. And that, you can't kind of pull back from that very easily. So there's just some brutal stars in that. But some really exciting companies coming through. These are all the ones out of Wellington. So of our 40 odd, there's 17 that have come out of this region. And so there's some in there, so you're going to hear from Dearly and Wilkemy and Tyson, Hotline Lads. Others in there though, we've got Ferranova, which is a medical device company. So this is a technology that came out of Victoria University. And if you think of contrast agents that you have to take when you're getting an MRI, they've simplified that so that a surgeon, as they're analysing the lymph nodes in someone's neck to decide which nodes need to be removed that are cancerous, they've developed a contrast agent that has magnetic nanoparticles and a probe which can measure and see where they are consolidating into the tumour. So rather than an aggressive, blunt way to kind of take the nodes out, it's a more specialist, focused way. So real advancements in kind of cancer care. So it's, there's just so many good things happening. So I'll spotlight a couple. So X-Frame is one that's come out of Victoria University here. And what Jed and his team have done is designed modular building frames. So his mission was, how do we really cut through a lot of this construction waste? It's not recyclable, there's a lot of bad materials that just end up in the waste dumping stations. What's the place? But, and, sorry?
Transport station.
Yes, yeah. So, but what he's done is like each of the layers can be removed and recycled and repurposed. So you think of a Lego block system, so you can kind of reconfigure, and so for office fit outs, you can actually contain service spaces, but then reconfigure that as your needs as an office location change. So they are doing repeat business in the ANZ stores and fit out. So they are now based in Australia and getting some real traction in terms of scale and what they're doing in terms of a real impact in building construction waste. We've got Allegro Energy is another one which has come out of Victoria University here, and what they've done is one of the barriers to getting a lot of more energy efficiency and use of renewables is the ability to store that, and long duration storage is a bit of a barrier in terms of helping with electrification. So Thomas and his team have developed and proven and scaled up long storage duration battery solutions, and they've partnered with Origin Energy in Australia, so an ASX listed energy infrastructure company, who are now working with them to demonstrate at pilot scale these long storage duration batteries into their infrastructure. So they have scaled their technology. They are showing signs of real market engagement and a real path to scale. So as that technology demonstrates in the time frame, they are ready to be buying multiple shipping container solutions to put throughout their grid. And they are getting the attention of others, not just in Australia, but further abroad into Europe. So you're seeing the start in New Zealand and Wellington here, and scale. So, these are companies that we're putting the spotlight on because we have created a way for all Kiwis to actually support these kind of companies. So if you think of the Rocket Lab example, companies like this wouldn't have been visible until they listed in the broker. So you're kind of getting this kind of really early insight to what's changing the fabric of the New Zealand economy in terms of its backing our next generation. And so we've got our success of our primary industries and now this build up of the technology industries that are creating really great jobs. So I'll come back to this because each story, each company, each mission they're on is so powerful. But we can't get too caught up in all of that because actually what we are responsible for is how do we build diversity in the portfolio so if one of them fall over, you don't actually lose that total value. So we think of diversity from a couple of perspectives. The stage of the company. So those companies at the seed stage, great technology innovation, it's working, but do we really know yet that the market wants it? So our check sizes and our allocation of the total fund is small. So lots of little holdings in those companies. And then as they mature, we're getting that validation. Customers are coming, the technologies are working, and they now have their eye on growing into bigger markets. So that's as you start to move to expansion. So when you think of the risk of the fund, it's looking at, well, how much is it? It's really high risk, and then how much has some evidence that they're actually building of scale and attracting the right attributes to build great companies in terms of capital, team, and customers. The other piece we do in terms of managing that diversity is through sectors. So we're not all in healthcare because there's things that can happen in that part of the market that knock the value out of all those companies. COVID is a great example. Unless you are developing a vaccine or if you're in those sweet spots, a lot of those other healthcare companies just didn't get a look in. So you're kind of vulnerable to macro global conditions that might erode values. So having that balance by sector is another thing that we do. And also thinking about timelines to paying customers for companies. So a drug development company is many years before that medicine is given by your GP doctor and you get a royalty from that. So that's very long versus developing a enterprise software where you can get a paying customer in a shorter time frame. So that's the other way that we are mindful of where does value come from and how do you recognise that within this kind of portfolio. So quite deliberate in making sure we're not overweighted in any way or shape. And then the other thing when you think about a fund like this and why would you actually support or get involved is what's that fund's ability to get into high quality opportunities. Because there's 2,400 tech startups in New Zealand and we're looking for 40. And we look for those by having our partnerships and reach through into the universities, so know what's coming through from the best academics. So we've got our partnership with the 2 universities, and also I sit on Auckland University's investment committee, so I get to see some of those early things coming through, so good insight and early insight into what's coming through. And then also these deep relationships with specialist investors. So understanding, so if you think of a venture capital fund, they're looking for the best 10 in their particular sector, whether it be healthcare or clean tech. They're picking 10. So us having solid relationships in there, looking at which are their top 2 we want to go into and get a slice of, then that's kind of the other way that we're positioning for high quality companies. And then the general wider community around startups, it's kind of having those relationships, and because I've kind of been in the space for 25 odd years, kind of company operators. So those are the kind of 3 things in terms of can that fund get into the best deals. So that's one of the things I'm quite mindful of. So that's kind of the rush through in terms of the fund, but some of the key things, this fund has an existing and diversified portfolio, so you get a running start. We've got that access and proven access to a lot of high quality science and engineering companies. So these, if you think about, are the companies that are really looking to have a major impact in terms of how do we deal with the energy crisis, how do we think smarter about delivery of healthcare, how do we better use scarce resources. So there's just some really big things that Kiwis are in there developing solutions for. So really looking at that high returns in terms of our targets, and investing alongside those specialist investors as well. And then the other piece is, which is quite unique and one of the things that I haven't touched on around liquidity. So because it's an open-ended fund and because we are consciously pricing the value of those assets, does mean people can move in and out of the fund. It's an open-ended fund on your own time horizons and goals. So typically in a venture fund, you would be locked in for 10-year investment cycles, and you're waiting for them to liquidate that portfolio of assets, where this is more geared to all Kiwis who don't have that luxury of kind of waiting for someone else's kind of time frame to pay out. So that was one of the real deliberate steps we took in terms of listing on the NZX as a discipline of the daily price and providing that mechanism for people to kind of participate. So that is the Innovation Fund, and it's all about giving everyone the chance to back great companies. And so now you get the chance to hear from a couple